Well, good morning, gentlemen. It is noon, and so I know that you all are, you two are busy, and our group is busy that's coming into the room. And so while we wait for a few more people to join us on Zoom or Facebook Live, I'm just going to do a quick introduction. My name is Joe Henning. I'm President and CEO for the Chamber of Commerce, and I appreciate Ty and Grady joining us today as we have this conversation for the Business Booster Lunch. I want to thank our sponsors, our elite members, for sponsoring today's program. You know, actually next month marks my 2 years here at the Chamber. And when I first started and started asking around, you know, where do I need to focus? What are some of the issues that we need to address as a business community and as a community as a whole? Transportation was the one that came up over and over and over again. And so it's kind of fitting that as we mark 2 years that we have this conversation around the Transit Master Plan and some of the different opportunities and needs that we have here in Henry County. I had there was a webinar I was on yesterday, or a meeting I was at yesterday, where the I-75 in McDonough is the number 31 bottleneck in Georgia. 31 out of 100 bottlenecks in Georgia were right there. And so, you know, we see that. We also know that the economic impacts that we have, you know, whether it's good traffic, you start spending your money locally on other things rather than gas because you're wasting your gas in traffic. That's an investment in jobs. For every investment, a dollar that's invested, there's about a $4 return on economic impact. You know, and so that's one of the many reasons that, and of course, the business development aspect of it too, that the Chamber fully supports transportation and the master plan. And so today we've invited Ty Salters he's director of Henry County Transit Department here in Henry County. He's been here since 2014. And we have Grady Smith, who many 24 years of experience, professional experience in transit and transportation planning and that. And so I'm going to turn it over to the two gentlemen to kind of give us an update on Henry County's Transit Master Plan. If you do have questions, please feel free to put them, if you're on Facebook Live, put them in the Facebook comments and we will come back to those. If you are joining us via Zoom, please use the Q&A feature rather than the chat feature so we don't have to monitor all the different areas and miss your question, because I'm sure you've got some great questions and comments. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go dark for, take my camera dark for a bit while they go through the transportation plan. In the meantime, if you have questions, go ahead and post them and then I'll return at the end. And we'll be happy to ask them any questions that are relevant to the Transportation Transit Master Plan. So gentlemen, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if you need anything, please holler. Gary and I we're here. We're just going to have our cameras off. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe, for the introduction.
Thank you.
Gary, are going to allow me to share my screen? There we go. All right. Do you want to kick us off, Ty, and then I'll jump right into the presentation?
Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say now, everyone. Thank you for joining us here for the Transit Master Plan. We thank the Henry County Chamber for inviting us for this presentation. We hope you enjoy it, and we'll be glad to answer any questions at the end.
Thank you, Ty. So we started this process about 4 months ago now, and it's entitled Henry County's Transit Master Plan. Today, I'm going to kind of give you some background on what's happening with the study, where we are with that. Second here. What is a transit master plan? Because we get that question a lot, and there is a lot of transit planning going on in the Atlanta region beyond Henry County. Some of the existing conditions and future conditions work that we've completed to date. There's some really good nuggets of information about travel and conditions and growth in the county that we'll share. And that's kind of where we are right now, is gathering all that good data. We'll talk a little bit about some of the benefits of transit, public transit. Joe hit on one of them, and we'll talk more about that. And then finally, we want to make sure that you know how to stay involved in the process along the way and answer questions. So what's happening now with transit in Henry County? One of the first things we found out in some of our outreach and surveying is that a lot of folks don't even know that there are some transit services currently available in the county. So some of that service includes what we call demand response service, and essentially that's the service that Ty oversees for the county. That's a scheduled in advance type of service. It's curb to curb. So a vehicle will pick you up at your home and take you to your dialysis appointment, to a doctor's appointment, to sustenance, or to the grocery store. It's open to all county residents with no restrictions on age or disability or income or mobility. It's $4 per trip, $2 for seniors, and it's available Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. However, one of the most important pieces to using this service is you have to make a reservation 1 to 7 days in advance. It's a highly utilized service. Some stats about the Henry County Transit Service. In 2019, Ty's system provided over 70,000 trips for folks around the county. Their fleet is of 32 vehicles. They have 1 large bus, a number of cutaways, 29 cutaway vans that they provide the majority of the bulk of the service, and then 2 smaller vans. Ty's office is located there in McDonough near the Henry County Government Services cluster. Henry County Transit currently has a contractual agreement with the Department of Human Services, DHS, to provide transportation services supporting DHS clients. So that's a big part of what they do. In addition to the demand response service, Henry County has benefited from a regional transit service provided by the state, and that's the Atl Express Service. And I'm sure you all are familiar with the various park and rides located across the county. There's one at the Brandsmart parking lot, one in Stockbridge. There's also a park and ride in McDonough, and then one down in Hampton near the Raceway Speedway. The routes that they provide, and this is a commuter service from Henry County into the core of the Atlanta region, downtown and midtown. The route 430 from McDonough to downtown, the route 431 from Stockbridge to midtown, the route 432 from Stockbridge to downtown, and then the 440, 441 via US 4119 goes up through Clayton County and then eventually terminates in downtown Midtown. Some information on the utility of those routes. In fact, for the Atl Express system, the Henry County routes are probably some of the most utilized routes across the entire region. So you can see here illustrated in the bar chart some of the daily boardings at the park and ride locations, and you can see Stockbridge. You know, there's points in time pre-pandemic where you couldn't get a parking spot at some of these lots. So Stockbridge is highly utilized. You can see over almost 60, 70,000 boardings per day occur there. McDonough as well is pretty utilized, and then Brandsmart. So let me talk a little bit about what the transit master plan is. That gives you a sense of what's out there now in terms of transit service. Let's talk about the master planning process. And so this diagram kind of illustrates some of the key elements of the planning process. We're going to be working with Ty in the county to rebrand the service, update the logo, fresher look to the service. And so we'll be working on some rebranding work here over the course of the process. We're going to be really taking a deep dive into the financial considerations of transit. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that's an important piece, especially with the Build Back Better America, the stuff that's going on in Washington. Transit is going to be a major focus of that. We think there's some great opportunities to leverage some more federal dollars to support transit expansion in the county. Fair policy is a big piece of the work. I mentioned the DHS service that Ty provides. The contract that the county has with DHS is a part of that analysis. That contract hasn't been revisited in terms of what the state is paying into that. So we're going to take a look at that and refresh that in terms of affairs and policies around contractual service. We're going to develop some short-term, mid-term, and long-term recommendations, form that up into a composite 30-year transit vision for Henry County. The goals of this whole process, of course, is all about partnership and stewardship, and that is within the county, but also kind of leveraging relationships and partnership with other regional agencies that provide transportation and transit services. As I mentioned, this is all about visioning. So we want to be visionary in developing this plan, thinking out 30 years. We all know that on the transportation front and in many fronts, technology is taking a toll and it's moving quickly. Automated connected vehicles, technology. So we want to make sure we're future-proof and think visionary about this planning process. Set and define a structure to build out that vision over 30 years. A big part of that is going to be about connectivity, as I mentioned, connectivity within the county, but also to the broader Atlanta region. And then money funding is going to be a big part of that. And as I said earlier, leveraging federal funds, state funds, as well as stretching our local dollar is going to be a big part of what we're going to accomplish from a goals perspective. So why the need for a transit master plan? One of the biggest reasons and drivers for transit in Henry County is population and employment growth. Henry County is one of the fastest growing counties in the state. And as that growth occurs, so comes congestion and other issues with our transportation network, and transit can be a solution, a part of the solution in dealing with that congestion and addressing that growth. Changing finances. And so traditionally, transit is funded from the federal government in two colors of money. One color is funding for rural type transit services, and essentially demand response service is really a rural service type of service. The other is urbanized funding, which is more about fixed routes that serve a given corridor. And the federal government sort of funds those pots based on the demographics of a given community. And so as Henry County urbanizes over time, and I'll share some information on sort of that growth, as the county urbanizes, its ability to pull down those rural funds shrink, but the ability to pull down those urbanized funds grows. And so that's a challenge that Henry County is dealing with, and we'll be looking at opportunities to really take advantage of those urbanized federal dollars. Unmet demand pre-COVID, Ty can tell you that he couldn't provide enough trips to serve the needs across the county, and we know that demand is coming back as we bounce back from the pandemic. There's a lot going on around the region with from peers looking at transit as a solution. Just south of Henry County, Spalding County is undertaking a very similar transit master planning process. Rockdale County is engaging. Douglas is just completed and has implemented a series of fixed routes out in Douglas County. And of course, the larger counties, DeKalb, Fulton, Cobb, and Gwinnett, have all completed transit master plans and are looking at transit as a part of the solution set. A T-SPLOS or a SPLOS, making sure that we consider those dollars and how we can take advantage of those dollars for transit. And then finally, beyond the individual counties doing these transit master plans, the Atlanta Transit regional system is being developed. The regional plan is being developed by the state. And so taking advantage of what's happening locally with our transit planning process and plugging into the state transit plan as a part of the need for this exercise. So this graphic kind of lays out our process. And as I said earlier, we're in the process of gathering data and analyzing that data so the existing and future conditions work. The next step would be to sort of, based on those conditions, identify needs, gaps in the existing service, kind of define what those needs are. And then the final step is to match up those needs with recommendations, be it capital projects, operating improvements, fare policy, all of that to address those needs in terms of short, mid, and long-term projects and strategies. And then we'll document all that in the final transit master plan. Along the way, however, we do have points of information from the public from a series of committees and from our elected officials and stakeholders. And that's illustrated across the bottom of this chart. We have two major committees. We have a technical committee, and that committee is made up of Henry County government staff, but it also includes our regional partners from the ATL, the Atlanta Regional Commission, the Georgia Department of Transportation. All are partnered in that group, and they're going to be providing technical guidance as we complete the study process. We also have a stakeholder committee, of which Joe sits on. Joe has participated in that group with us, and that group will be providing us also insight along the way on each step in this process. So at the end of the day, what we want in terms of outcomes with this planning process is a concise, locally supported plan. And as I said, with those short, mid, and long-term objectives kind of spelled out for us in projects. We want it to be in line with funding opportunities. We want to, as I said, we want to stretch the local dollar and leverage as much state, federal, and even private sources to implement the vision. And then finally, it's going to be a very concise, actionable plan for not just the county, but also the cities. And so everybody will know their role, their responsibility into achieving the objectives of the plan. So let me pause there and talk now a little bit more about the existing and future conditions analysis. And this is a work in progress, but I'll share some of the early findings that we have today. The existing and future conditions are broken up into these four categories: land use and demographics, economic development, state of the current transit system, and I kind of talked about what services are out there now, and we'll kind of talk more about how they're being utilized, and then other transportation investments and opportunities that are going on in Henry County. So I talked about earlier population growth, and Henry being one of the fastest growing counties in the state, if not the nation. This graph illustrates sort of that growth since 1990 and projected out to 2050. So, you know, Henry County is projected to be a county of almost 400,000 people in the 2050 timeframe. The map to the right kind of shows some of the concentrations of that population in terms of density. So the darker the shade, the more dense the population is. And it's sort of logical. It kind of follows and abuts the I-75 corridor with Stockbridge and McDonough being sort of the core area for density. But as you can see, I mean, the explosive growth over time has occurred. Population growth has occurred in Henry County. So let's kind of take that and put it in context to that point I talked about from an urbanization perspective. So, and by definition, every census, the urbanized area is redefined by the federal government. So back in 1990, the urbanized area for Henry County was really focused there in the Stockbridge area. It made up only 2% of the acreage of the county. And so back in 1990, the majority of Henry County was considered rural by the federal government. So look, in the 2000 census, you can kind of see that we grew quickly and roughly 30% or 28.3% of the county became urbanized in that census. And then in 2010, over half the county was considered urbanized. And as we look towards the results of the 2020 census, we suspect we will probably be well at 70% of the county considered urbanized. And as I said earlier, that's an important factor in getting Federal Transit Administration monies. As we urbanize, we get more opportunity to pull down urbanized transit dollars, and we lose opportunity to pull down those rural transit dollars. On the employment side, growth as well, and we know this is a sweet spot for the chamber, but you can see back in 1990, we had a little over 50,000 jobs in the county, and we're projected by 2050 to have almost 100,000 jobs in the county. This is an important factor when we're talking for transit, when we're talking about getting people to work. You can see similarly on the population side that I showed you earlier, you can see the employment density of jobs per acre, where our jobs are located. Clearly, Stockbridge and McDonough are sweet spots but you can also see, the 155 corridor, the industrial hubs down there, and then the commercial activity down in Locust Grove around the Tanger outlets, all pop out on this map. So we'll be definitely looking at connecting these places better, connecting people to jobs as we think about our transit system and the vision for transit in Henry County. Here's another way to look at work, getting people to work. And this is the map to the right kind of illustrates the darker the color, the higher the probability of folks commuting to these locations for work. And so as we expected, the majority of the folks in Henry County are destined to jobs outside the county, to the airport, downtown, midtown, Buckhead, all kind of show up on this map, Emory and Sandy Springs as well. So again, as not just internal to the county, we're looking at connections for transit. We're also will be pursuing and looking at opportunities to better connect people to travel and commute to their jobs outside of the county. Another lens we're going to be looking at is folks that have no other choice and really depend on transit. They're reliant on transit to get to work or to get sustenance, to get to medical appointments. And so these individuals are folks with disabilities, folks living without a car, living in poverty, as well as our senior citizens. And the map here shows where those concentrations, those demographic concentrations are in Henry County. That's an important part of the transit mix. And so we're going to make sure as we look at opportunities to expand transit, that we make sure that we serve these folks as well. This chart is mode split, and this is all about how people commute currently. In that pie chart, you can see the majority of the folks in Henry County drive alone, and that's why we have those congestion issues on I-75 and on many of our arterial roadways. We have a lot of folks driving alone. 27% on the shared ride side. And the interesting factoid there is that before the managed lanes came online in Henry County, that number was in the single digits. It's about 4 or 5%. And so we see that people are taking advantage of the managed lanes, and the shared ride has increased to double digits, 27%. Surprisingly, 5% of folks walk, and Ty and I and others were talking, Gary, we're talking a little bit about that. And if you ride up and down the arterials in Henry County, you got a lot of service-oriented jobs, the fast foods, and people are grocery stores, the Walmarts. People are walking to get there, and that's an issue in Henry County, the lack of sidewalks and connections to get folks to safely across arterials and to those jobs. So that's something that we're going to be looking at, that first mile, last mile connections to transit and to those jobs and destinations. Less than 1% use transit and about 1% bike, with no significant changes in our infrastructure and how we plan to move people around in Henry County. Projection for mode split by 2050 it wouldn't change. I mean, we can have some significant issues with congestion if we don't begin to think about other modes and moving people around more efficiently. This chart gets at sort of the existing commuting patterns. I kind of said we know that a lot of folks are destined to jobs in downtown, midtown, the core of our region. About 76,000 trips a day are destined to jobs outside of Henry. About 21,000 are commuting to locations within the county. And then there's a huge influx of folks coming into the county, mainly from Clayton County, to access jobs, be it at the medical campus there at Eagles Landing or the school, or there are a number of folks coming into Henry County for work. And so one of the things we're going to be taking a look at is how can we bring the jobs, the housing balance, the better we get that in balance, the more or the better our transportation network can perform, because trips are shorter and therefore congestion could be reduced. So finally, let me talk a little bit about the benefits of transit. Joe stole some of my thunder, but for every $1 invested in public transportation generates about $4 in economic return. And these are all factoids that the American Public Transit Association provides. And we have some links on our website to even more information on the benefits of transit. For every $1 billion invested in public transportation supports about 50,000 jobs. We know the millennials are very, very interested in being near transit, traveling using alternative to Uber Lyfts, the scooters, and transit is a part of the way they like to move around. And so that's a growing trend. Of course, transit has the benefit of the environmental benefit of reducing CO2 and greenhouse gases. Households can save roughly $10,000 a year by eliminating one car. And as we come out of the pandemic, we're all starting to realize the inflation, cost of gas, the cost of transportation, food is all going up. And so if we're able to save on our transportation costs, it can really help a household. Of course, I mentioned transit can reduce congestion. The photo here demonstrates that. You see in the right-hand side of the photo, all the cars of that single occupant vehicle. If everybody was in their car, look at how much roadway space is taken up compared to moving those same number of individuals in a transit bus. Can make a huge difference on congestion. And then finally, reducing crashes on our network and Vision Zero and the opportunity to be safer. Transit kind of lends to that as well. So let me close with giving you some insights on how to stay involved in this process. We're going to be having a series of public meetings, and we'll be working with Joe and his team to provide you the information on that. We do have quite a bit of social media activity going on, some e-blasts. We have some online surveys and polls. And a lot of that great information is out on our project website. I really would encourage you to go out to that site, www.henrytransitmasterplan.com. There's a gaming exercise to test your knowledge of transit, and will help educate folks on the various modes and how they operate and how much they cost. There's some information, a mapping exercise out there that allows folks to put a pin on the map and identify issue areas or even opportunity areas for expanding transit. And then also you can sign up on the website for our email list, and we'll be getting out information that way as well. So getting the word out, please, we would encourage you guys to support us there. We're gonna, as I said, be promoting some community events coming up. We would love for the chamber to help get the word out on that. Again, help us get the word out on the website and get some traffic there, and get folks to really participate in some of the mapping and other exercises we have out there on the site. And so with that, Joe, we're ready to answer any questions and move on to the next phase.
All right, well, thank you very much. I want to, please, anybody that's joining us, and there's several dozen that are on here joining us, if you have questions or thoughts, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A or into the Facebook Live comments, and we will come back to those. But Grady and Ty, I want to thank you. I think this was a great overview of exactly what we're looking at with the Transit Master Plan. I want to reiterate or go back and make sure that we make these points as we move forward. We talked about the job growth, and I know that the Development Authority recently announced that in the last year, fiscal year 21 for them, they had $451 million in investment in new and expanded development there that equates to 2,640 jobs. So the growth is coming. The growth is here. The growth is coming. Many of these are, I would say, I'm going to guess, and I'm probably wrong, but I would guess that about half of that investment is from existing industries that are already here, such as Ken's Foods and some of those others. And so we do have those that are here that are expanding. We do have those that are coming into Henry County because we have a great workforce and a great quality of life, and that's what we're all proud of. So the growth is coming. How are you looking at, I mean, ask me to do a strategic plan, and I'm going to ask you if I can get away with 3 years. How are you looking at 30?
So we have a number of tools in the toolbox, Joe, and a big part of that is coordination with the Atlanta Regional Commission, and they are looking at a 30-year planning horizon as well. And so they've developed a couple of cool tools. One is a regional model that forecasts growth and travel, and so it's a travel demand model. And so we'll be utilizing that model that forecasts they forecast out to 2050. So that will be a major input to what we're doing. So it's a crystal ball, but we do have a few tools to help us along the way.
Well, and I think that's key to stress that it is a regional look at that, because as you stated, the Henry County Transit Master Plan, that will also help to build up and roll up into the Atlanta Regional Transit Plan. And so unless, and again, I'm going to ask for clarification, but what that means is we have a more solid, more stronger voice then as the region transportation develops. Is that correct?
That's correct, Joe. And so that also lends itself to, as I kind of alluded to a number of times over the presentation, is opportunities for more federal funds coming to the Atlanta region. And we're hearing a lot of discussion about Build Back Better and stimulus, and so having a coordinated plan that's top down, bottom up, meaning that the counties understand what their priorities are, and those priorities have been communicated collectively across the region, so that we go to Washington all with one voice, improves our opportunities to leverage more dollars. If we're all going asking for different things, it's tough for decisions to be made. And there are a number of regions that operate like that. I mean, they have every city and every county going separately, asking for funding. And so this allows for a coordinated approach, and Henry County is going to be a part of that.
Well, and I think too, to that point, Grady, when you have, it's for those with, more than one child, when they all come, when they come individually to you and they're asking for something and you're trying to figure out how it doles out, if they come to you collectively, you can say, yeah, that's fine, let's go to the movies, or let's go to the zoo or whatever. So the fact that we're as part of this group, it's not contradicting what somebody else is asking for. We're not saying we want this and somebody else is saying, yeah, there's no way that's going to happen. This is part of a master plan. And so that's one of the benefits we get to walk away with your work. I think the other thing too, and I don't know how many caught this on the event today. I know just driving up and down 20 and 75, it feels urbanized, but I still love to get out a little bit further away from that and have the trees and the open grass. But wow, 65 to 70% of Henry County estimated to be urbanized when we get the results from the 2020 census. That's crazy. That's amazing. There's definitely going to be a need for transportation, a transit plan. Let me just one final question, and I know we probably needed Sam on here, but Ty, I don't know, you might be able to help us with this. But as we look at, the Board of Commissioners has voted to put a T-SPLOS question on the ballot in November. We're going through the master plan right now. It's estimated, is it still on track, Grady, for a fall deliverable, timeline-wise?
You want to answer that? Take a shot at that one.
Yeah, so the timeline is November. It will be completed, and that document will be available for everyone to see.
Okay, thank you. So parts of what we're going to find as we go through this research, and that's why we want the community to be involved, is that as we start identifying some of these pieces, we want to be able to, for the community's knowledge right now, this transit plan is also going to work hand in hand with any T-Splosh proposal. Is that correct? I mean, they're going to be supportive. We're not going to contradict with that either. You know, we talked about all the counties, but these two documents will also work together. Is that correct?
That's a good point, Joe. And yes, so in addition to the transit plan, the county is also undertaking an update of its comprehensive transportation plan. And so the idea is to have a multimodal plan developed that would drive the T-Splosh. So the projects that would go into that project list for the T-Splosh could be potentially multimodal. So it would include bike and ped, transit, as well as the necessary road investments.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that's key to make sure that the county, that the voters are aware of that it is going to be complementary and not duplicative or redundant or wasteful, because I know that that'll be part of the conversation that we'll have to have as we move into November. Gentlemen, I want to thank you. I see a lot of positive remarks, a lot of exciting news, great presentation. So thank you all very much for this today. Ty, I know we want to get you back on the road. I know you're having a difficult day today, and I do appreciate you joining us today. It's wonderful, and you need to be commended and thanked for that. As we wrap up, would one of you gentlemen share the website again? Because I know that there's some great resources. There's opportunities to make public comments. There's different ways that those that are watching today now might be aware that they can share some of their information. And so Grady or Gary, I don't know if who has access to screen share right now, but if one of you might pull that up, I know that there's some buttons or some links on the left side of that page that we can highlight for the individuals. Thank you, sir. Yeah, henrytransitmasterplan.com. If you haven't visited it, please go visit it. There's a lot of great information on there. And there's a lot of ways that you can give input and share some of, Gray talked about the pins and some of the opportunities out there. I know that there's, feedback loops and everything there. So if you have thoughts, this is your opportunity to make your case, to share your thoughts and your concerns. But this is, and I have to commend you both in the county in that this is not being done in a vacuum. The stakeholder meetings and some of the other events that I've seen and participated in, very open to conversation and what is being looked at in that. And so I appreciate that. I think that obviously just helps to make the final document that much better, but also that much more accepted. So gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And as you mentioned, this screen capture doesn't really show, but we've just added a Learn tab, which is all about education. Some great activity and information there. So go out and take the transit mode test. It took me 2 times to pass, so good luck.
I don't feel so bad now.
Well, again, thank you, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, gentlemen. And Ty, again, safe travels, please.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Please be out. If you've watched this and got anything out of it, please feel free to share this as well out on your Facebook pages and that. And let's get some more of Henry County aware of what's happening within the transit area of Henry County. Thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next month at the next Business Booster Lunch. Grady and Ty, again, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having us.
My pleasure.